ado, please welcome Mr. Tim Ritchie.
Thank you. Is this about right? Okay. Well, I am really so impressed with Mission San Jose High School. I read about you online and all the great things you've done over the years. So congratulations. This conference is terrific. Great leadership, so well done. Give yourself a round. I've been at the Tech about a year and a half now. And one of the things I love most about the Tech is the mission statement. The mission statement is that the Tech exists to inspire the innovator in everyone. The most important word in that statement is not inspire, and it's certainly not innovation. It's the word everyone. It is an article of faith, not an article of fact, that we say we believe there is an innovator in everyone we serve. It's really an article that's consistent with what it means to be an American. That hopefully we are not essentially tribal people, but we are people who believe in the power and the importance of an individual. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, all people are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Every single person we serve, we believe has an innovator in them, and that's one of the reasons I've come to the Tech. Another reason I've come to the Tech is because it's in Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley represents something very important, not just to this country, but to the whole world. And it represents the belief that the universe is abundant with answers to the problems we face. And that the answers are out there, and if we work hard enough at trying to find them, we can find solutions. So the idea that we live in an abundant universe, the idea that you have an innovator in you, and that if you apply yourself, you can find an answer to the problem you face is bottomless in its beauty to me. And then, of course, Silicon Valley adds to this other element and says, you know what, we can even find a way to make a living doing that. We can solve problems and we can create wealth, and we are open to the entire world. We don't care what tribe you come from. We just care that you can solve the problem and that you can help make money, or in this case, provide a living or create jobs, create wealth. That is an astoundingly important message to the entire world right now. Because the entire world is asking the question, should we divide ourselves by tribes, Sunni, Shiite, Christian, Muslim, Asian, European, American, or should we believe that there's something fundamentally important about you as an individual, and that we can come together as a human race and solve problems? So that's why I'm here. Then I need to know which button to push. Let's see. This one? Yeah. So I want to talk today about the mindset of successful entrepreneurs. Not innovators, but entrepreneurs. An innovator is someone who solves a problem in a unique way. Innovation, in a way, is like the practical expression of imagination. So we all know what innovation can be. You see a problem, you see something different, and you have an innovative solution to it. But the person who can actually turn that into a way to make a living, to make a life, to create wealth, that would be the entrepreneur. And it seems to me that before we get onto that, we need to talk about the importance of mindset first. This is something I believe deeply, that as a person thinks, so he or she will be. What you think, your script about reality, your script about yourself, your script about other people, your script about the way things should be for you and for other people, that will determine the trajectory of your life. You need to think hard about that. You all, at this age, come into a world with a lot of shoulds because of your family, because of your school, because of your culture, because of your environment. And all those things, if you have those same shoulds all the way through your life, you'll never be any different. You'll always have to challenge the shoulds in your life, your mindset. How should things be? Be willing to adapt. Be willing to change. Be willing to grow up. Be willing to learn. Because as your mind changes and as you open yourself to other ways of thinking, so you will become that as well. So what about the mindset of successful entrepreneurs? It does begin with passion. We're going to talk about that. The other mindset is that entrepreneurs do not mind risk and failure. Entrepreneurs build teams. Entrepreneurs defy the conventional wisdom. Entrepreneurs develop a supporting culture around their teams, and at the end of the day, entrepreneurs persevere. They are resilient. They take risks. All right, so let's talk about passion for a second. We're eventually going to get to these pictures. You recognize them all, I hope. We'll eventually get to the great entrepreneur, Steve Jobs. But what about other people who in their own way were great entrepreneurs, who had deep passion? What about Beethoven? You know, music can be defined in a sense as before and after Beethoven. Beethoven changed everything. So great was his passion for music. But the truth is, at the end of his days, Beethoven could not hear a note that was played because he was completely deaf. Beethoven thought about committing suicide, but the music in him was so great that he persisted in life until the end, when he created the Ninth Symphony. We've all heard the great strains of the Ninth Symphony. He had to listen to it, not with his ears, but to the vibrations of the piano, that he cut the legs off, put the piano on the floor, and lay down and could hear the vibrations as he composed one of the greatest symphonies in the world. What about Gandhi? So great was his passion for an independent India, but not just an independent India, one that was brought about through peaceful non-resistance, that he paid a tremendous amount of price. Everyone knows the story, perhaps who's in this room, but just think about that as we apply it to the business setting. Steve Jobs was passionate about a lot of things. He was passionate about design. He was passionate about creating world-changing products. He was passionate about creating world-changing businesses, Apple, Pixar, and the like. There are many negative things perhaps you could say about Steve Jobs' relationships with people, even maybe some negative things you could say about the extent of his passion for what he did. But Steve Jobs represents what every great entrepreneur has, is an abundant passion for their businesses, an abundant passion for their products, and the willingness to do what it takes to succeed. Defying the conventional wisdom. I'm going to guess that most of you will not recognize any of these pictures. Some of you may recognize one. For those of you who want to be doctors, this is a picture of John Snow. John Snow in 1854 defied the conventional wisdom about a cholera epidemic that was happening in the Soho district of London. Everyone believed what was called the miasma theory of things like the bubonic plague or cholera and that sort of thing, which is airborne diseases. But John Snow realized, because of a very careful study, which then gave birth to what we know as epidemiology, that the cholera epidemic came because of a single pump, a single pool where people drew water in the Soho district of London. And he simply said, take off the pump. Make it so that people can't use that pump, and the cholera epidemic will begin to dry up. And in fact, that happened. And people did not like what he had to say, because he eventually made the point that the cholera epidemic was caused by fecal matter that went from basically the people were ingesting. And people didn't want to believe that, even though it was true. John Snow defied the conventional wisdom, and we benefited now as a result. How many of you recognize this picture? Yes? All right, so this is Muhammad Yunus, one of the great bankers in the world today from Bangladesh. In 1976, he left his position in the university. He would go off during the day and visit some of the poorest parts of Bangladesh and realize that, contrary to the conventional wisdom, small micro loans could be made to women in Bangladesh, and that they could begin to create, they would pay back their loans, they would begin to build wealth. He defied the conventional wisdom, which was that bankers would not lend to poor women in Bangladesh. He did. He took $27 of his own money, lent the money, women began to prosper, and he started an entire movement that's going all around the world now on microfinance. My daughter, who is 20, is flying right now to Peru, where she will work in Lima for the next 6 months on microfinance programs in Lima. He was awarded the Nobel Prize. I guarantee nobody will recognize this picture. Anybody? This guy is one of the reasons we all have cell phones. It's a guy named Sam Ginn. And in 1984, he went to the Olympics. 1984, he went to the Olympics in Los Angeles, and he saw people talking on these things that were called mobile phones, and he said, that's the future. So as a young man, he went back to the company where he was the president, PacificTel, Pactel, and said, the future belongs to people with cell phones. And Pactel said, oh, it does not. The McKinsey study shows that only 900,000 people will have cell phones in the world by the year 2000. He said, you're wrong. And then he called his mother in Anniston, Alabama, and said, Mom, I'm going to retire from Pactel, give up my job, and start a mobile phone business. And she said, what are you, nuts? But nonetheless, this relatively average student from Anniston, Alabama, who went to Auburn University, helped create AirTouch, which was then bought by Vodafone, which was then bought by Verizon, became an incredibly successful business person because he had the courage to pay attention to what he was seeing, and he defied the conventional wisdom. Risking failure. Everyone's heard the story, I hope, of Thomas Edison. Edison had 1,093 patents. 1,093 patents. How many times do you think Edison failed? Well, the great apocryphal story, which is probably true, is that he tried to have the filament for the light bulb. He tried 10,000 times and failed 10,000 times until he got it right. And Edison's, of course, great line was, I didn't fail 10,000 times, I just found 10,000 things that didn't work. And then, of course, NASA. You may recognize this picture. Those of us who were around when this happened know it well. This was the destruction of the Challenger. And we remember that well. But every day that NASA takes on a mission, NASA risks failure. It's just a part of what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs risk failure every day because they just think of it differently. And Silicon Valley is so wonderful that people think of it as a notch in their belt to have had many failures which led to their great successes. This is Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and Bezos left his job in New York as a hedge fund manager, making lots of money, to pursue this idea of an online bookstore, which seemed crazy. He had to drive all the way across the country to Seattle, bought the rights to Amazon. Didn't make a dime for 6 years. Those of us who were around in 1994 remember, Amazon was a little bit of a laughingstock, actually, for several years, because it just didn't make any money. And even after 6 years, I think it had a profit of a small amount. But of course now, it's wonderfully successful. Everyone thinks it's great, but that was after 6 years of risking failure. And if you study the Amazon culture, it's in a lot of the cultures of a lot of the big companies around here, they're all about risking failure. One of the great joys in life, though, is not to work by yourself, is to work with a team. If you've seen the recent Lincoln movie, you'll know that Lincoln surrounded himself with his rivals. 4 of the people who ran against him for the Republican nomination for president were on his team. Most of them thought he was a buffoon. But Lincoln was a forgiving person, and he realized that for the good of the country, he had to build a team that included the best and the brightest, even if they were his rivals. What about LeBron James? Could never win a championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Last year, he won a championship because he surrounded himself with some great people in Miami. Right now, it's a little bit of a question. If you follow basketball at all, they've lost the first game. No single person can really be great for the long term. You have to have a team. And what I would say for you as you think about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, this is one of the great joys in life. And you probably experience it here in high school with these bright people that you work with. Build teams, enjoy them, do what you do best, and then get a team to supplement for the rest. I don't know if you recognize these people at all, but you've heard of them. You've heard of Moore's Law. Everybody's heard of Moore's Law, that the processing speed of semiconductors will double about every 2 years. Well, the guy who invented that's Gordon Moore on the right. The guy who invented the semiconductor is a guy named Bob Noyce. He's in the middle. Bob Noyce died before 1990. In 1990, Jack Kilby was given the Nobel Prize for the semiconductor. Noyce would have won that year too. He would have shared it. Those two were brilliant guys. They left Fairchild Semiconductor. They started a little company called Intel. But Intel never would have become Intel if they hadn't had this guy on the left. That's Andy Grove. Andy Grove supplemented what Bob Noyce and Gordon couldn't do because he could make the trains run on time. So they built a team, they created a great business. It's not enough to create a team, it's not enough to defy the conventionalism, it's not enough to risk failure, and it's not enough to have great passion. You have to, if you're going to have a long-term success, build a reinforcing culture. Martin Luther King Jr. was not able to do what he did in the United States just because of his great powers of oratory. It was because he was surrounded by things like SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He had people around him like Dorothy Cotton and James Farmer, Jesse Jackson and John Lewis. This was a team that created a whole culture, just like Gandhi had created, that was able to withstand the fire hose, that was able to withstand jail, that was able to withstand the biting dog, because they had a collective culture of nonviolence. Southwest Airlines has risen to become one of the most profitable and biggest airlines in the world, but it started out with Herb Kelleher and others to create this culture that was kind of wacky, kind of fun, a little bit poking at their competitors all the time. The Southwest way is a very well-known way of doing business in a certain way. And if you want to be a great entrepreneur that sustains the test of time, you have to also build a reinforcing culture. And of course, the big symbol for that these days is Google. In fact, there's a movie about it right now. Everyone knows about the Google culture that Sergey Brin and Larry Page, Stanford students, they wanted to create a university-type culture in a business that rewarded the kind of the culture that you would have on a college campus they created in their business. It doesn't hurt that their search engine has produced so much cash and so much wealth that they're able to create this culture still. They're attracting the brightest, they're attracting the best, they're buying companies, they're able to do what they do, not because they're very different, say, than Intel or Apple. This is the Google way. And so they're able to create this reinforcing culture that people find very attractive. Finally, perseverance. You know, this really is kind of the bottom line. You can't risk failure and not persist. You keep on keeping on. I love the stories from earlier today from Jack and Dee, from the stories of this persisting. Keep on keeping on. One of the great symbols of that, I don't know if you recognize who this is, that's Helen Keller. Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama, which is the northern part of Alabama, in the early part of the century, and she went deaf and blind at age 1.5. She was the first woman to graduate from Radcliffe, which is now part of Harvard. Her friends, she counted among them, would be Mark Twain and others who ended up paying for her college. But all through her life, she persisted in spite of her disabilities. Everyone will recognize Winston Churchill, who failed more than any politician in the 20th century. But he also succeeded more, and he held Britain together through World War II, and he was one of the great, great survivors of the 20th century. He is his famous graduation speech from Harrow, given at Harrow in the middle of World War II, 1941. He, of course, was never give in, never give in, never, 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 never give in. And it's a great story, and we all have to persist. And then, of course, there are countless examples in industry. This is just one of them. Bloom Energy. I don't know if you're familiar with Bloom Energy. It's right there, right here in Silicon Valley. They make basically what they call a power station in a box. It's a solid oxide fuel cell. If it ever becomes profitable, it will change the world. The problem is that it hasn't been profitable in 12 years. Yet the founder is staying with us, the people are staying with us to continue to raise money. They got another round of funding just this past year, $130 million for a second round of funding. They have to persist and persist and persist if they're going to do this world-changing technology that can both make money and also be great for the environment, great for the future, get people off the grid. You talk about something that will change the world. One day, maybe Bloom Energy will, but it won't happen unless they continue to stick with it. So that raises a question about you. Think about this for a second. Think about some of the things I've said. Think about the things that you are really passionate about. Think about the places where you've seen you could defy the conventional wisdom. Think about where you could build a team, where you could create a reinforcing culture, where you could keep on keeping on. You know, you're wonderful, bright kids. You're going to do maybe some great things. I would challenge you to make sure that you make your lives count for goodness. And I'll close with this wonderful poem by Mary Oliver called A Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've done all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan